In today's Cyberpunk 2077 video, I want to talk about choices and if they matter. The choices you make regarding Delamain's future being one of them, the romance options you pick throughout the game and if they're relevant, along with a glitch that I found may upset a lot of people, because if you've done the same as I have, then it means you might not be able to progress into the future of any DLC content. My name's Mike, you're watching Deconstructing the Game. Let's get to it. If you're playing the PC version of Cyberpunk and you have mods installed, you might have the option to use the debug menu, which allows you to jump to any mission within the game, provided the script still works. Now, if you start off the epilogue mission in the debug menu, before anything starts you'll be asked a series of questions as to who you are, what sex you are, what life path you chose, what kind of Delamain's flying about, who your romance partner is, who's alive and who's dead, and what kind of ending you chose. Now, is that really relevant? It's the last mission of the game, so why are all these questions being asked? Well, one reason is because this is used for testing the game's mechanics to make sure nothing actually gets broken and everything works okay. But it got me thinking, are the choices we make about Delamain actually that relevant and that important? And do our romance options actually make a difference within the gameplay? So I tested them out a little bit, and this is what I came up with. This video does go into detail about the Delamain endings and also the ending of the game as well, so there is going to be some spoilers, so if you haven't finished the game or you don't want to know anything about this, cut the video off now and watch something else. If you were paying attention at the start of the video, you may have seen that Delamain has 4 possible statuses. There's Default, Amnesiac, Junior and Merged. And we're going to go into detail about what all these 4 mean and how you can achieve them. This is going to get a little bit confusing, so to make things easier, if you just imagine that Junior Delamain and Excelsior Delamain are the same vehicle and the same entity, this will make things go a lot smoother. After chasing down and corralling all of Delamain's runaway vehicles, Delamain will ask you to attend the HQ because he's having problems. After you fight through to the Delamain core, you'll be granted with 2 options. 1. Reset Delamain's core, and 2. Merge the personalities. If you reset Delamain's core, this will erase all the artificial intelligences that have separated from Delamain and reset him to default. This is not the default Delamain in the debug menu and is actually Amnesiac. Default Delamain would be if you never actually conducted this mission or completed it. If you reset Delamain's core, he'll thank you and give you a vehicle to drive around in, but this vehicle does not have an AI voice like the other ones you might receive. For example, if you merge Delamain's personalities together, he'll become some kind of super AI and tell you he has to leave this place because the world is not meant for him, but he will leave you with his first son until your dying days. This is another Delamain vehicle which just has a different personality construct in it, and the language is a bit more juvenile in nature and is a bit more quirky. There is of course a third option. If you decide to destroy Delamain's core, you'll be granted with another vehicle called Excelsior. This vehicle is in fact the one that helped you and Jackie escape Konpeki Plaza, and it does remember you. Excelsior will also stay with you until your dying day, will be granted a different conversation in the same Delamain voice, and then that's that. Where it gets confusing is the debug menu. You see, all these choices relate to the end mission where you get picked up by the Delamain aerial vehicle to the afterlife, and it relates to the conversations you have within the AV. Default Delamain is in fact the Delamain you would have if you didn't actually complete this mission in the first place, and Amnesiac Delamain is the one in which you would have if you reset his core. Where things get difficult to understand is Junior Delamain and Merged Delamain. You see, Junior Delamain is actually Excelsior, and it's the vehicle you get if you destroy Delamain's core. The Merged Delamain shouldn't actually exist because that Merged Delamain has disappeared off into the ether, and Merged Delamain should actually be Junior Delamain. So in my opinion, the options should state Default Delamain, Amnesiac Delamain, Excelsior Delamain, and Junior Delamain. These options make sense, but the debug menu just doesn't make sense to me. And the reason I say that Excelsior Delamain and Junior Delamain are the same is because if you destroy Delamain's core, Excelsior is the one in the garage. And then if you merge Delamain's core, Delamain gives you his first son, which is the Junior Delamain. So Junior Delamain should turn up if you merge the cores, but he doesn't. It's actually a different version of Delamain with like a weird amalgamated voice. But if you destroy Delamain, it's actually Excelsior that turns up, but has Junior Delamain's voice. It's a bit weird and it really is confusing. But regardless of that, how do they actually make a difference? Well, in short, they don't. All they really make a difference to is the dialogue in which you have with Delamain on your way to the afterlife during the Path to Glory mission. The language is a little bit different. The junior Delamain speaks in a bit more quirkier voice and he uses junior language, whereas the other 3 options are very similar but a little bit different. That's all it really is. So if you were like me and thought the 16 intelligence actually made a difference, it doesn't. It only just makes Johnny Silverhand happy and you get a different interaction with Delamain. There is one more interaction you can have with Delamain, and that is if you destroy the core. Angry Delamain will send you random messages and pictures, which will change depending on how you reply. There is also a mention of Delamain going to space, which is a bit weird, but hey, I'm guessing this was meant to be part of a different story or something, and they just added them in for comical value or something. One thing the game doesn't take into account is that you can actually eradicate Delamain completely. If you reset the core and destroy him, or merge the personalities and then destroy the core, effectively you're destroying Delamain, but the game doesn't take this into account. In fact, the game gets a bit weird if you try and do this, whereas you might get stuck in the Delamain garage, or the game just finds it difficult to choose what kind of Delamain you decided on picking, and then therefore it chooses a randomized option at the end. I did spend a lot of time on Delamain because I was told that there was potentially an option within the game which allowed Delamain to come with you during the end missions, which I'm assuming could only really be accomplished if you're choosing the Aldecaldo mission, whereas Delamain can only go really so far in his vehicle form. You can spawn Delamain in the mod menu as he is an actual person, but that's only because he's a character model for the television screen, and he's not actually in a person's body or anything like that as far as we know. I guess you could have Delamain as the AI that helps you to Mikoshi, but this eradicates the need for Alt Cunningham and muddies the water a little bit, so maybe he could have been like technical support in a different form. Now I believe a creative decision was made as to not include Delamain in the last missions, and I believe there was also meant to be a larger element of his missions within the game, but I believe that this was changed prior to release. But who knows, we might actually see Delamain in future DLC, and the decisions we made in the game may actually reflect how we see him in the future, but that remains to be seen. Choosing to have a romantic partner in Cyberpunk 2077 is something you can do as well, but ultimately has no bearing on how the game ends. You don't have to romance Panam in order to leave Night City with her and the Nomads. You just have to pass a benchmark of missions in order for that to happen. But I was surprised to see that there were romance options available in my apartment in the Path to Glory mission. This is something I'd never seen before in the console version pre-patch 1.2, which is where I assume they fixed the bug, because I had Judy as a romance option, she did stay in the city, but she never appeared in the apartment. I tried it again on a different playthrough with a different character, and they did appear, but this is very strange. And there's a reason why I put a poll up not so long ago asking anyone in the different versions of the game and different platforms of the game if they had the partner appear or not. The dialogue option between romance partners in the apartment is somewhat unique, although it does kind of head to the same direction. Some people want to leave Night City while other people just stay and wait for you to come back off your mission. But it's still a nice touch that I wish I'd seen on the first playthrough, as it kind of provided closure in some respect. You can see this has been patched pretty hastily because the coding and the programming isn't quite there yet. Judy was actually fully clothed in the bed when she got up, and then after the shower she was in her pyjamas. Whereas in another case I was speaking to Panam and I chose the shower option, which kind of bugged into the conversation, and we ended up teleporting through the apartment into the shower again, and then I got stuck. There's also another bunch of bugs and glitches that are quite apparent in the console version as you get to these last missions, because there's lots of crashes, there's lots of bugs in relation to clothes popping in and out. Sometimes my character wouldn't wear any clothes, sometimes didn't have any arms. It was just very, very strange. So it makes me wonder if this wasn't actually meant to be the end of the game, and the space DLC that's coming up was actually meant to be a part of the main game originally, and they sliced it, but they did a very bad job of that. But that's just my opinion based on what I've seen in like the glitches and the bugs, and it could just be my system, and it could just be the console port of the game, who knows. However, when it comes to bugs, the biggest issue I found was that if you have actually climbed V's apartment outside the mission and obtained the clothing and the jacket, then this isn't going to be here when you try and do the last mission. Because the game tries to tell you to put the jacket on before going to Delamain, and if the jacket's not there, you can't progress to the next stage of the mission. So if DLC does progress V's story and you are able to cure yourself by doing the Path to Glory mission, and you have a fully fleshed out character that's level 50, then you're in for a shock, because unless CD Projekt Red patched this correctly and not just lock the doors to stop people going in, you're going to be stuck out of any DLC that progresses your character any further, like I am. Now, this isn't a problem if you haven't climbed the apartment building and you've obtained the jacket by doing the mission, because it puts you back to the point of no return and it reloads the items in that apartment. But if you've got them in your inventory right now, you're screwed. But let's move back onto choices for a second. The choice to go back and help Takamura ultimately decides his fate. Whether you keep him alive or dead doesn't really affect the last mission of the game if you're going down the route of Arasaka. It really just depends on who you speak to in the space station. For example, if you keep Takamura alive, he will come and visit you, and if he's dead, it'll be Anders Hellman. In my opinion, it should have been more fleshed out because Takamura plays a huge part in the game, and in my opinion, some of the best missions are played with Takamura. But will Takamura play a larger part in DLC? And I'll come back to this in just a second. Because if you look at the debug menu, it asks us if Weyland is alive. Now, Crispin Weyland is actually the son of Andrew Weyland, or also known as Weyland Boa Boa. He was a mercenary who butted heads with Morgan Blackhand on more than a few occasions. Now, if any of you have been keeping up with the speculation about who Mr. Blue Eyes is, you'll know that it's speculated that Mr. Blue Eyes is either Morgan Blackhand, or he's being controlled by Morgan Blackhand. Now, if we decide to go and help Crispin Weyland and ultimately save his life, this could have some interesting consequences for future DLC in the way we interact with Crispin and Morgan if, in fact, Mr. Blue Eyes is Morgan Blackhand. Because there's already a bit of a distaste in Johnny Silverhand's voice when he notices who Crispin Weyland actually is, but towards the end of the mission, he says he's okay, and in my opinion, Crispin Weyland is a fantastic character. He's so funny, and I laughed way more than I should have at some of his lines. So I really want to see Crispin Weyland in future DLC. And if Weyland is in DLC, I hope his part to play isn't just some sort of achievement like Takamura's is. Not to mention that if we do the last mission ourselves, i.e. the secret mission, no one has to die, because ultimately you have to pick a side whether or not you go with the Nomads or with Rogue or yourself, and ultimately if you go by yourself, no one dies, and there's all these characters that could play a large part in future DLC. And ultimately CD Projekt Red could redeem themselves by bringing these choices forward into DLC. They don't matter in the current version of the game, but all these choices may make a difference in future content. Is Adam Smasher alive? Is Oda alive? Is Takamura or Saul alive? Is Rogue even still around? All these characters that we may still have around in Night City could play roles much bigger than we anticipated in future DLC. Will it happen? Ultimately, only time will tell. Everyone should know by now that there's multiple endings to Cyberpunk 2077, some of them better than others. One of them being the Arasaka ending, which in my eyes is the worst possible ending you can have. The Nomad ending is a second ending, which is seemingly a good ending where you ride off into the sunset with the Nomads, but is that really a cure for V? Will you find a cure, or will you come back to Night City? You can have the space ending or the Path to Glory ending, in which seems to me the only way that V is going to survive in the future and points to DLC content. And then there's a Johnny Silverhand ending where you could effectively stay inside Mikoshi and let Johnny Silverhand keep your body. The question is if we're going to see a separate DLC to tie all these endings in and have actual final consequences without being pushed back to the point of no return. So with patch 1.3 on the horizon, depending on what they've actually done with it, because I've recorded this after the announcement yesterday, I'm going to watch the stream later today, and I hope they introduce way more than just what they advertised on the news page, and hopefully they have a foundation to solidify the DLC and make all the bugs and the glitches disappear for good. I appreciate the video has jumped around from point to point in relation to first of all Delamain options, romance options, and then who lives and who dies, but ultimately I think it ties really well into the end of the game so far and how future DLC might pull all these choices into effect. If you've enjoyed the video you've watched here today, you can check out more on YouTube, or you can join us on Discord and get involved in some of the discussions and share some of your thoughts and theories about future DLC and about Cyberpunk as a whole. My name's Mike, you've been watching Deconstructing the Game, and as always, I'll catch you later.